we have moving particles in the air, for example, we have vibrations. And our ear will caught that vibration and turn it into an electrical signal, and our brain perceives this as an experience. And we perceive the sound as changing a physical movement into electrical. And today we will talk about this, about the experience in a sound. My name is Kadanec, as you heard already. I'm a creative audio director at a company called Ambience Production. And today we will talk why sound is very important. So we will talk about three main things. It's the sound importance, the creating of sound, and the implementation and optimization. These three main categories I divided into 5 levels, and we will go from level to level and explain what's going on. Okay. So as a human baby, we start to hear sounds around us even when we are in our mother's womb, and we are old from 16 to 18 weeks. So from early age, actually when we are born, we actually can hear the sound already, and we are communicating sound-wise with our mother. Baby is crying and calling for the mother. So we are accustomed for the sound from very beginning of our lives. And we are so used to it, and we are using the sound for the orientation. We can detect the size of the room, the position of the emitters, etc., etc. And this is very important for using in the movies and video games, and we will talk about this later. Okay, so let's guess the sound. What makes this sound? Yes, it's a bird. What kind of bird? Okay, so you guessed it. It's a bird because you heard bird a lot of times. Guess this sound. What makes this sound? Motorcycle? Car? Rally car? Okay, rally car. It's the right answer. Why? Because what's your name, sir? Andre knows, because he knows the cars, I assume. Okay, so based on your experience, you just heard the sound, and you could detect the object emitting the sound. Guess this sound. What does make this sound? Sorry? Parrot? No. It's actually a creature called Armadillo, and it's a creature that is from South America. When he's in a danger, he crawls into a ball. And I know this sound of Armadillo because we work on the game, and they had a character of Armadillo, so I need to study the sounds of Armadillo, so I know that this is the sound of Armadillo, but it sounds like a cattish, piggish dog, something like that. Very strange sound. So we know when we experience something, we immediately connect visual with the audio, and we know what creates that sound. Now let's talk about the perception of the sound. I will play the clip. Listen very carefully. What is happening here? We have a drummer in one room, and when we close the door, we hear the drummer in the next room. But actually, this is everything made artificially. I made this with using of sound modulators, like equalizers, reverbs, and delays. But I tricked your ear. You actually thought that this drummer is in the next room. Why? Because you experienced this. Because you know the neighbors are fighting on the other side of the wall, and you have a experience in the sound. So a lot of, you will hear a lot of experience in this presentation. So let's try to change the sound of the closing door with the sound of the bubbles, okay? Okay, very convincing. I just switched two sounds, and you now thought that that my microphone was underwater. And this kind of tricks we use all the time in the games and in the movies, and we can stimulate the player's feelings to show him a background, to make him to feel the background even more, or ambience even more. Now, let's go to sound effects. Okay, in our company, we divide sound effects into three categories. The first one are straightforward one-shot sound effects that you can, what you see and what you hear. You connect what you see and what you hear. The second part are ambience, when you have a lot of sound effects merged together and you hear as one whole sound, but there are a lot of sound like ambience. And third category is a voiceover. The voiceover is like a separate category because you can communicate with the voice differently, and there is a whole new chapter about voice acting, etc., etc. So when you put these three things together, you can get a complex multimedia sound. It's very important to prioritize your sound. For example, if you are playing first-person shooter, and it's important to survive, you need to make an accent on the footsteps, on the specialization of the sound in the space, so the player can hear where the enemies are, like in the next video. Okay, so the explosion told the player that something is on the right side, and when he turned on the right side, there was an enemy. So in this kind of games, you need to know what are the priorities of the sound. But let's look at this video, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, it's the same category of the game. Do you think that here is our footsteps important as in a previous one? Do you think that sounds of the enemies in a space are important as the previous one game or not? What do you think? Not so much. Why? Because the yeah. The nature of the game is different. In the first game, you need to be quiet, listen everything, and kill the player. In the second game, you need to pump the adrenaline in your veins and go and slash everybody. So in the Doom game, you need to push the sound effects to be crunchy, to be gross, to be fulfilling, and to push the player further and further. Okay? So what about nature? When we have a fisherman, we need to put the realistic nature, because this kind of games are playing the people that are fishermen, and they know how nature needs to sound. Same as for cars. So here you need to make a great engine, to make a great nitro sound, to have a feel that you are drawing very, very fast. But there are games where you communicate with the player story-wise, like in Ori. So basically you are telling the story with the music and with the sound effects. And then there are times when you need to stay hardcore and nostalgic. So if you have a game that is made on a like on an 8-bit platform, you will create the sound that represents the same platform, the same status of the game. Like awesome game. So you see on these examples that in each game sound is different, but very important to communicate certain things with the player. Okay, now let's play some game. I will make you an example on a game called Smashing 4 by Jiva. We are working with them on this game. We started working with them last year on characters, so we are creating sounds for the new characters. And I took an example from their shop. Here we have 3 orbs: Royal Orb, which will be in our case orb number 1, Epic Orb, in our case orb number 2, and Ultimate Orb, orb number 3. Okay, you can see the pricing is different. So the Royal Orb is the least price, and the Ultimate Orb is the you must pay a lot of money, and the rewards are different. So the Ultimate Orb will give you the more cards, the more power-ups, etc., etc. So when the player pays, he needs to be rewarded with the sound. So I created, just for a demo, sounds for these orbs. Okay, so let's listen. This was Royal Orb. Epic Orb. And Ultimate Orb. Okay, let's play a game. I will play the sound, and you must guess the number of orbs. So if it was emitted by orb number 1, 2, or 3. Okay? Okay, so raise the hands if you think it's orb number 1. Orb number 2. Orb number 3. Bravo. Orb number 1. Orb number 2. Orb number 3. No, you're wrong. 1, 2, 3. It was 2. Ha! Gotcha. Okay, so the sounds were great. They were satisfying, but they weren't memorable. So I will make a simple example how you can make a memorable sounds. So let's put this to the easiest level just with the piano. Okay, Royal Orb. And now the question. Who thinks this is orb number 3? Yes, exactly. So now let's combine the psychology of the piano example with the sound design. Okay, so there is a progress, and in a it's very simple trick and method how you can stimulate the player and make an experience even better. Okay, now let's go to music. Where do we often hear music in multimedia? There are a lot of spheres in multimedia where the music is one of the main parts, but most common are movies, trailers, commercials, and of course games. And to make a comparison, I will talk movies versus games. Okay, so let's start with the movies. Okay, so in the movies we have a main character, we have a director that directs the whole situation, and we have a script, which is like a story. Okay, so now imagine that the director calls the composer, you, and he will describe you the script. So he'll tell you something like this. So we have a main character, and the T-Rex will come. No, you know what? The Mecha T-Rex will come. Mecha T-Rex 3000 that shoots the fire. No, that shoot the fire sharks, that shoot the fire and lasers. And our character will go in the back. Can you compose the music? Yes, of course. You can compose the music for this kind of scenario. So the composer will start writing the music, and movie will be published, and you will watch the movie downloaded from the torrent and on your computer. And each time when you turn back into this scene, in a particular frame of this scene, the music will be always the same. And this is the linear composition. Because when you return in each frame, you will hear from that frame on same music. But what if the director is gamer? What if he can choose the same situation as it was in the script, or he will write his own script in real time? He will tell, okay, so I will try to attack this dinosaur, or I will try to ride the dinosaur. These are three totally different scenarios, and if we compose the music that is the same, it can be boring, because what kind of thematics will I use if he is behind the bush, or is he riding a dinosaur? Okay, so now we will talk about adaptive model. So adaptive model of music is when the music adapts on the actions of the player. And this is very, very important in gaming, because player will feel like he's in charge of the game. I will show you examples on the two games that we were working on lately. It's called the Space Trees and the Castle Heroes. But first we need to go through some theory about this, about the orchestration. So we have vertical orchestration and we have a horizontal orchestration. These two kind of approaches are necessary to make an adaptive model of music in video games. So when we have a vertical orchestration, we have drums. Oh, I have laser here. We have drums, for example, some score, and the guitars. And they can change vertically. For example, guitar won't play at some parts, and then it will be included in some parts. And we will switch the layers. One part will be played, other parts won't be played. The horizontal approach is when we have totally different styles. So, for example, we have a action music, and then we will jump to a, I don't know, wonky music, and then we will jump to a intense music. Okay, and we could jump from one to another seamlessly. So these two approaches are horizontal and vertical integration. Do you understand this? Okay, great. So now I can show you examples. Let's go to a Space Trees. It's a space shooter. You're a spaceship in a space and shooting to another spaceships. That's a scenario. Okay, so when you start to play game, the first wave of enemies is coming at you, and we have like a simple just drum part. As more and more enemies are coming, the music will be more and more complex. Okay, so I will show you how it works. Yeah, one more thing. Yeah, so that was a vertical approach, and horizontal is when you go from a battle to a boss fight. So in a battle, you will have a progress of music that depends on the number of the enemies, and then when the boss fight is going on, you will jump to a boss fight music. And now let's go to demo. Okay, so here we have a parameter that controls the number of enemies on the screen. Okay, and we have music that is divided into 5 states vertically. So if we have much more enemies on the screen, the music will progress. And now let's hear how it sounds. No, that wasn't it. So this is the start of the game, and now, for example, you are shooting at the enemies, and more enemies are coming towards you. And you can kill the enemies, and you're all alone. And then more and more enemies are coming. And as you can hear, the music changes seamlessly, so you don't even notice the transition. Okay, so now when the boss came to a screen, it will sound like this. 3, 2, and now we are at boss fight. Okay, and I will switch now to a default fight. Okay, and now I will switch the number of enemies and switch to a boss. Switch the cursor. So as you can see, the game could communicate with the software, and by moving just one parameter, you can create the orchestration for the whole battle, and it's awesome. Now, let's go to Castle Heroes. So, Castle Heroes, it's like a strategy game for mobile games, for mobile devices. And we have a village where you build your heroes, and you train them, and then you go to a battle, and you battle the enemies. So it's simple. You click on the hero, click on the hero, click on the action, and attack the enemy. Here, I will demonstrate you a horizontal approach of changing music. So this parameter represents the wave or the wave of enemies. So when you clear one stage, you go to another, and then to another, and then to a boss fight. Okay, so this parameter represents the percentage of the cleared stage. So if the stage is divided into 4 parts, in each 25% you will switch the state. Okay, so let's start from beginning. The battle will start like this. And you will be fighting against the enemies. And then when you accomplish your mission, it will switch. And you can see that music changes seamlessly, but this time it changes horizontally. So it jumps from one thematic to another thematic. So this is a adaptive music, and this is the way how we try to implement this into a video game. Okay, now let's go to a implementation. We talk about music, we talk about the sound. So we need to put this together. If the composer composed some music and the sound designers design the sound effects, we need to implement them into a game. If we have a shooter, for example, we need to attach the sound of the machine gun to the sound of the machine gun. On the animation, the footstep needs to be implemented, the music needs to be created to be adaptive, etc., etc. So, because we didn't talk about ambient effects, I want to talk about ambience now. We will make an example of implementation of ambience. So here we have a map, and this camera represents our player. And our player will go into this bubble, and this bubble represents the area where he will be able to listen the ambience. Okay, so he will go on this route, and here he will hear the ambience of the forest, but when he goes into the bubble, he will start hearing the ambience of canyon, the reflections of canyon, and then here he will hear the village music and the ambience of the village. So this is like how it looks like in the engine when you implementing sound effects, ambience. Now let's make an example. So here we have a top view of the beach. Here's the forest, and here's the ocean. We have shore here, and at the center of the screen is our player, our soldier. So he was here in the forest and he ran towards the ocean. Okay? So when we implement the sound in this game, the sound needs to be very realistic. So we create a bubble. You can imagine that bubble is here, and when he's inside that bubble, he will hear the forest sound. But here we can implement the ocean sound. And when he is in the middle of the forest and the ocean sound, where they are crossing each other, he will actually hear both of them, and it will feel natural. And when he moves even forward, he will be hearing just the ocean sound without the forest sound. And this is very good technique to make a realistic ambience. But to be even more realistic, we need to throw the spheres of, for example, ocean waves, and when he goes close to these ocean waves, they will start triggering, and you will have not the same feeling of the ocean, for example, here and here. And it's a good way to make some random implementation, because nothing in the nature is everything in nature is random. So when we are in the forest, we can implement winds, etc., etc. So this is like these are like basics of implementation of the sound. And last but not least, the optimization. Okay. So you remember the box. When we made a sound, we need to implement the sound. We need to provide the sound for platforms. Most common platforms are PCs, console, and mobile devices. Each platform has a different kind of specification, and on each platform you need to optimize the sound differently. For example, the PC is like in a God mode. You can customize it. You can have external graphical cards, external musical cards, and basically you can make the sound very, very good on these devices. Consoles are dedicated devices for the gaming, but they have hardware restrictions. So when the console is old, you need to buy a newer model. And the mobile devices are one of the most used gaming devices, because we have each one of us have the mobiles in the pocket. And actually, modern mobile phones are pretty damn strong hardware-wise. So they have strong hardware, and you can push great graphics on the mobile devices. But you need to pay attention about the resources, because in a mobile phone you have a CPU, you have a memory, and you have a RAM memory, device memory, and a RAM memory. And this is like a triangle that you need to pay attention to. If you are pushing the good graphics, the good mechanics in the video game, you will push the CPU and you will drain your battery. Okay? So when you are creating, for example, the music for the mobile devices, it's very important to calculate, should we compress the music. For example, if you compress music to MP3 files, it will be low on a storage point of view, but your CPU will need to decompress the MP3 file, and you will have a much greater usage of CPU, and it will drain your battery. So you need to balance this. And the implementation for the mobile devices is a kind of topic itself. I have a whole presentation dedicated only for the implementation for the mobile devices. And I would like to tell you that we actually managed to make a console experience for the mobile devices. So when the player is headphones and playing the games, the sound is the same as on a console and on the PCs, and yes, it's possible. But if you want to talk about that, we can talk about after the lecture. Thank you very much. That was it.